Before I get started on today's content, I just want to say that I'm not feeling the best, so you may notice my voice is a little bit different and I'm talking a little bit slower. The video is longer, but because we included more matches, incorporating some of your feedback. But if you could leave a like and even a comment, that would be greatly appreciated. And watch the video as much as you can, because the longer you watch it, it helps the algorithm. This video was very, very hard for me to make. It took a good portion of my Saturday because, again, I am not feeling the best, and it was very hard for me to talk in a way that would make this video clear. But let's go ahead and take a look at what you're here for. I've seen the comments requesting an update to the budget steel amethyst deck from Rise of the Floodborn. And when I did update this with the Into the Inkland cards, I took it into 6 matches, won 5 out of the 6, and the one match that I lost, I won the best of 3 of it. This deck only cost $41, and just like in Rise of the Floodborn, it definitely overperformed. Again, I was very impressed with it, and this deck has honestly changed my viewpoint on some of the interactions with the Amethyst cards that have opted for me to include it in my Ruby Amethyst deck as well. Before I go into the deck list though, I just want to say that I'm only making this because I've seen the feedback and the comments from individuals on these videos. Like, obviously the video you're seeing on screen here isn't the video you're watching now, so this will be updated to the video you're watching now. But I do depend on your feedback in order to know what you want to see next. So make sure that you interact with the videos, you leave requests, and you just post what you're feeling and what you think. Anyways, moving into the deck list here, we've replaced both of the 1-drops with the X and 2 Challenger 1-drops in both Amethyst and Steel. So we took out the Olaf and the Tiana, and we input 4 of the new Rafiki Mystical Fighter, and we went back to 4 Captain Hook Forceful Duelist from Chapter 1. This is very relevant because against aggro and against the new Emerald Steel deck and the Emerald Amethyst deck, which it looks like those are being poised to be the top contenders for the metagame, at least in the early beginnings of Into the Inklands. This opening on turn 1 will allow you to either establish the Snake or Smee on turn 2, which is a very strong play because it's still a 3/3 body on turn 2, or Pinocchio exert the turn 1 or 2 or even turn 3 threat like Ursula, Deceiver of All, the singer that sings songs twice, is a 2/3 body, and being able to Pinocchio exert that and then take it out with a hook or a Rafiki is huge. So this tempo swing in this package here is very, very strong. This is how you're able to beat Emerald Steel very easily. You also play 4 Smash, and that's the main reason why as well, because you want to be able to smash the Ursula, Deceiver of All. I've talked about this many times before, and I think other top players are now opting to do this as well. I know RMB also mentioned in his updated Sapphire Steel deck, he's playing 4 Smash simply because when the Ursula comes down, you have to deal with it right away. I mean, you don't have to, but like, if you let that thing sing twice, the amount of advantage they can get off of that Ursula is just ridiculous, right? I mean, it was poised to be the best card into this format for a reason. So again, we've explained that the 2/3/3 bodies, and again, the Mr. Smee and Captain Hook have synergy since Captain Hook is the captain, and Mr. Smee, when exerted, will not take damage if you have the Captain Hook. So there's just a lot of synergy with these 1 and 2 drops, and it works very, very nicely. The 3-drop slot is pretty self-explanatory. You've got your Mim Fox, you've got your Maleficent Sorceress at 3, your Merlin Crab, which is now more relevant because the boost Challenger 3 that it gives can now also help you take out locations a lot easier. So while this was a budget option in Rise of the Floodborn, you've even seen, if you watch my Ruby Amethyst list, I've opted to include crabs in my Ruby Amethyst deck. Like, it's a good card. Like, it was a good card before, but now it's like even better. It has more application into the Inklands meta. We're still opting for 3 Benja. You can opt to play this or not depending on your local meta if you still have a lot of item decks around like Steel Song, etc. Still with 4 Goats, literally one of the best cards in Amethyst. And 3 Rabbits. I prefer this over Genie because Genie at a 3/5 body has to wait a turn to quest, and your opponent can Zeus it, deal 5 damage to it, and then your whole turn 4 is wasted. Whereas Rabbit at least hits the field, draws you a card, and even if it gets outed, it draws you another card. So this immediate effect, and the fact that if you can cycle it, you have that recurable resource that you can continue to draw off of. It's a 1-card draw engine, kind of like Beast Tragic Hero, etc. It's a good card to have at your disposal. So for that reason, I'm using the Rabbit over the Genie, and it's only $1, so it's not really a huge deal. We're still opting for 4 of the Donald Duck Musketeer. I think this is now more of a flex spot. We could explore other options. Same with the Madam Mim Purple Dragon. I think in slower matchups, these cards become ink. But in faster matchups, these cards become ink. In slower matchups, you can definitely leverage these cards in order to put pressure on your opponent and push for like game. Because this card is a hard card to out. It doesn't, like Mim Fox doesn't run over it. You basically have to Maui it. And The Madam Mim Purple Dragon demands like straight up removal. And we've seen Ruby Amethyst cut back on the removal, or on the top end removal. They don't play like Maleficent Dragons really anymore, etc. So this card is a lot harder to out. We still play 3 of the Yzma. Again, if you've watched the original video, you know how good this card is. And then the newest addition is the new 7-drop super rare Simba from Into the Inklands. When you play this character, and whenever he banishes another character in a challenge during your turn, you get to either draw 2 cards and discard 2, or deal 2 damage to a chosen character. So a very good budget option at 32 cents. I think this card is being overlooked, and yeah, it is expensive. So like I said, in faster matchups, this is just ink. But getting this down, and then, you know, being able to draw 2 cards, and then, you know, discard 2, or just dealing 2 damage to something is actually quite relevant. And if your opponent tries to play around this and like not quest or wait until they can out it, you have stuff like the Pinocchio in order to force an exertion and get even more additional effects off of the Simba. I've already explained the Smash. It's obviously just a generically good card as well. For friends, unlike the Ruby Amethyst deck, because this is a budget option, you're not playing the Queen's Castle, and therefore Friends is a little bit more important for a card draw. Whereas once the Queen's Castle becomes a $2 to $3 card, I think you auto-include it in this deck. Maybe cutting like the Donald Duck for it or something. I don't know though. We'll wait and see. And then of course the 3 copies of Grab Your Sword. You could opt this to 4 if you wanted and cut something else. But again, you do run the risk of drawing this in your first like 3 or 4 turns, and then it's just like a dead card for a little while. So it's not too much of a detriment since you only play 9 Uninkables and 51 Inkables. So the deck is very easy to play and very easy not to brick. But yeah, Grab Your Swords is still super relevant. You should be able to beat discard anyways, even without the Grab Your Swords, but this card is just a death sentence for discard. And we know that the Emerald Steel deck that's becoming meta does focus on a Bucky package, right? So this card is still very good, but enough talk. Let's go ahead and jump into some matches and see what this $41 deck can do against the meta. So for those of you who have also been requesting longer videos with more matches, here you go. To start off in this one, we're going second against the dreaded Sapphire Steel. A lot of people at my locals do not like this deck because of how slow it is and how long matches are going to be. But let me tell you, this match, sped up at 150%, is just over 3 minutes because this deck is very fast. I mean, this person is playing some spice, to be fair, but our deck just kind of dictates the pace. They're playing the new Robin Hood. We know how good that card is. And inking a Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood indicates to me that, yeah, you have another one in hand because you played the 1-drop. So we're going to drop the hook. That's going to stop them from questing with their Robin Hood here. And because I know they probably have another Sherwood, I'm going to opt to play this Pinocchio that I just drew and that interaction I talked about in the deck list. You're going to see just how good that is here, right? Even on the draw. This is why Pinocchio was so good and why I opted to play it in set 2 as well, in the set 2 meta, is because it's one of the few cards that can dictate a tempo swing early on in the game, right? We know how powerful being on the play is, but Pinocchio can swing that tempo back. So here you can see now my opponent has no board. They're struggling to establish something, not struggling, but you know, they're establishing things now, and I have the option to just continually out their cards, right? They have 4 cards in hand. I have 4 cards. I only have 5 now, and I have 4. I have a Pinocchio that's kind of air quotes dead, but they're focusing on continuing to ramp, maybe because they don't have anything else to play right now, and we're going to be able to further develop our board. So the rabbit here, once again, extremely strong, because yes, while a genie would be also nice here, but if the opponent on turn 5 is able to drop that Zeus card, I have no draw, no follow-up. Whereas this, I was able to draw off rabbit right away. It helps me see my game plan for the next turn a little bit easier. And I'm able to now drop another Pinocchio, give this rabbit Challenger 3, take out the Madame Odie again after dropping that second Pinocchio. And I have the option now on how I want to use my Madame Mim. I can either bounce back the rabbit for a draw, which I probably don't need to do since I have the friends and the opponent's not on Emerald, so I don't have to worry about it being ripped out of my hand. Or I probably just Mim Snake back one of the Pinocchios, so I have it for next turn as well. We draw into yet another friend on the other side, so we're going to double sing and just continue questing. And look at how the board state has developed because we were able to easily deal with the opponent's drops turn after turn. That's what Steel affords you to do, and the Amethyst control package allows you to also continue to lock down the board. So We're seeing the opponent go to 7 ink, and they're just forced to hard cast a whole new world, and that looks really nice for us. It turns out they did have the Zeus card, but they didn't have a second Robin Hood, which was very interesting. So they inked the first Robin Hood because their hand was likely full of uninkables. You're going to see us quest to 11 here. We got a wide board. We are susceptible to a grab your swords, which the opponent likely drew into. So for that reason, we're not going to necessarily overextend too bad. We're going to put a couple of cards on board that maybe replace themselves, like the rabbit will replace itself if it's outed. I'm willing to drop this Smee as well, but I'm going to keep the hook because, again, if I get grab your swords, I don't want to lose everything. They do end up dropping a Tinkerbell, but it's not enough, and I think the opponent just ends up scooping once they realize that we have too much control at this stage in the game. Alright, in this next matchup, we're going up against Emerald Steel, and we're going second. There was a problem with like my ratio on my monitor, so I didn't actually realize it until I looked back at this footage, but the opponent was giving me like well plays and stuff, and I didn't respond. So Travis, if you ever see this footage, my apologies, my guy. I didn't mean to like not respond. I actually didn't see the messages. So if you do see this, GG's. Thank you for doing the best of 3 with me. But if you have made it this far in the video and you haven't noticed anything off, and you're a real one because you watch my content fully, I am sick, and I have still pushed through in order to make this video for you guys because I do see that people are waiting for this update in order to take the budget deck to their league. So anyways, the opponent starts off with a Deville Manor location and a Prince Eric on turn 2. So I'm like, all right, I'll Rafiki the Manor and then snake back the Rafiki. In hindsight, this is probably not the best choice, but I guess what I was thinking is I can snake into the Manor, and then if they trade Eric into the snake, it's fine. They do have a smash, which throws off my tempo, but they only have 3 cards in hand now. So I'm like, okay, it's not the worst. Yes, this location plus this one quester is annoying because they're getting 2 lore every turn. They're going to continue to develop a board, and it can be a little annoying to deal with. So I'm also going to match them in terms of just dumping up my hand just so I can get more pressure on board to stop them from questing. And this location, like if you don't deal with locations, they're going to start running away with the game. So you absolutely have to deal with them. The passive lore gain on them is just, you know, it's not broken, but it's very interesting. So the opponent reveals that they're on like a actual hardcore discard deck. And I'm like, okay, this is unfortunate, but not necessarily the worst because all I need to do is see a grab your swords and I'm golden because that card, you know, usually will single-handedly beat discard. But yeah, the sudden chill allows them to draw a card here, and they've already kind of used up everything they could on this turn unless they have a 1-drop. So they use their last ink to just move the Eric into the location. So in this instance, this is a misplay. I should have used the Rafiki to take out the Eric, but because if I use the Smee, I'll take 1 damage on the Smee from the Eric, and then I'll take 1 damage from it being exerted. So like I probably should not have done that. Yeah, see, so this is what I end up going for. So this is another misplay. Again, not necessarily not knowing the matchup, but like I didn't know what kind of cards the opponent was on. But at this point, I'm like feeling okay. I'm like, okay, they're using up their tempo to play Hypnotize. I have 1 card left. I'm opting to keep the Smash to maybe deal with the Ursula Singer that I expect to be coming at some point. They continue to ink and do nothing with the Prince John here. They're going to, I guess, yeah, fire the cannons on the Rafiki and then pass turn. So drawing the snake here is interesting because I can quest with the Mr. Smee, bounce it back to hand, and again, just like I talked about in the decklist video or portion of this video, bounce it back to hand and replay it to clear the damage. I ink the smash, and now the opponent can't discard any cards from me, so the Prince John can't do anything else. They ink a Jafar, and I'm like, okay, they don't ink Jafar unless they have a good card to play. I definitely was not expecting this Flynn. I should have kept this Yzma in my hand and not inked it. But at this point, I'm like, well, I'll just race you, I guess. I have a goat. If I top deck any Fox or anything, I'm good. If I top deck a Smash, or not even better now, because if I top deck a Grab Your Swords, I'll be able to clear a lot of lore off board. I draw into the Pinocchio, and I'm like, oh, of course, right? The card that is not very great right now. I'm going to use goat to take out the location, and then quest for 3. The problem is, again, not expecting this Flynn Rider. They have another 4 lore in the waiting with those Prince John. They top deck their 3rd Prince John here. And so I'm just like, well, you know, Grab Your Swords would have come in super clutch here. I can even top deck a Friends and sing it. But at this point, the opponent knows that, yeah, there's likely nothing that can be done. We top deck a Benja, and unfortunately, we can't win the race fast enough. We were on the draw, to be fair. And shout outs to you, Travis, for giving me the rematch, which is what you're going to see here now. So the thing about best of threes, right? If you're a seasoned TCG player, once you know what your opponent is on, it does affect your playstyle, or at least it should. And therefore, knowing that my opponent looks to close out games with the Flynn Rider, etc., I know a little bit better what I need to focus on. And I know how important the grab your swords is going to be in this matchup. So drawing, like playing my draw spells in order to get to that grab your swords faster when I know I'll need it, is going to be very important. Turn 1, we start off with the Rafiki. The opponent inks a Bucky, which is a very interesting choice, and establishes a Cruella de Vil Manor. We're going to go ahead and ink Goat, and then just crash the Rafiki into it, drop a Mr. Smee, and pass. Kind of funny that I didn't draw into Hook at all, really, I don't think, in these matchups. But that would have been nice to see. They drop an Eric on turn 2, which is pretty good. We're going to go ahead and likely ink this Friends. No? Okay, we're going to drop Pinocchio first to take out the Eric with the Rafiki this time, right? Let's see what we're going to do here. We don't want to waste our Smash necessarily, because we want to save that for the Ursula Singer. Interesting choice to choose not to take out the location. But I guess one more turn of lore doesn't matter, and the Pinocchio can take it out next turn, was kind of my thought process. So we do quest with the Smee for 2, and then we take out the Eric with the Rafiki. The opponent is going to be on 6 cards, though. We are only on 3, and 3 on board, so we are in a little bit of a precarious state. They ink a Bucky, and they're going to opt to play a Flynn Rider for 2. Now, this is a good candidate to also smash, just because we don't necessarily want to voluntarily discard by challenging it, and we want to stop that 2 questing power anyways. The thing about like Merfolk and Flynn Rider is you're likely going to have to deal with them at some point before you have an empty hand, and so your best bet is to just deal with them as quickly as possible. Otherwise, they're getting free lore while you wait, and then you're eventually going to have to answer it if you know that you don't have any other ways to get rid of it other than challenging and discarding that card. So keep that in mind. I do end up smashing it there because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to deal with it at some point. They establish the Flynn Rider evasive, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good for you, but I'm going to keep 2 cards in my hand. If you have the Lucifer or another discard spell, so be it. We're going to choose not to ink here. They're on 4 cards, but we are, again, ahead in the lore count, and we're putting a lot of pressure on the opponent. Seeing that Bucky being dropped is pretty nice, because it means the opponent has a pretty weak follow-up turn 5. They're going to sing Bippity Boppity, so that tells me their hand is kind of full of cards that they need other combo pieces in order to use. But the reason they do the Bippity Boppity is to trigger the Bucky, so they want to just keep me on minimal resources. The top deck Friends here is really nice. We're going to sing that with the Goat, draw into another Goat and another Smee, which is fine, but we're just going to continue to quest here and then save the Smee by snaking it back to hand and redropping it, because it's better to do that than to swap out Goat, because the Mr. Smee is going to represent 2 lore anyways next turn. They drop a Lucifer, which is unfortunate because we're going to have to discard 2. But again, the opponent's only on 1 card, and this Flynn Rider won't be able to quest fast enough in order for them to catch up. And the rest of their cards on field are very weak. I've talked about this before with the Emerald discard package. You need to play strong bodies, because obviously what they have on board here is extremely weak. There's not much that they're going to be able to do in order to stop me from winning the game. So we're just going to continue to quest with everything and drop a Benja here, which pretty much seals the game for us, because I don't think even a Grab Your Swords top deck would save them. Yeah, because Goat gets outed. They have no way to deal with the Benja, and Benja just quest for game next turn, even if they had Grab Your Sword. So I don't think there was anything that the opponent could really top deck in this situation to win them the game. And they reveal Prince John. Now they just end up scooping it up, and let's go on to game number 3. So the weird thing about this one is for game 3, he opted for me to go first. If you caught it at the end of that last screen, I don't have the option to choose to go first or second. So either they didn't select it, or I think it auto selects that you have to go first, and then you can opt to change it to go second. So they must have switched it to second and wanted to go second for the extra card, I guess. Which makes sense to a certain extent with this card. If they know what I'm on, and they know like, oh, his smashes and his Zeus that he's probably playing, etc., can't interact with my ward characters anyways, I'd rather keep him on less cards by making him go first, and I'd rather have the extra resource. So they start off with the Flynn Rider, and we once again start off with the Rafiki. So again, haven't seen Captain Hook at all, but at least we did open a 1-drop, so you can't really complain. We're going to continue the exact same pattern and drop a Smee on turn 2. And going first with our deck is A-okay, right? We can definitely deal with what the opponent is throwing down. Here in this instance, questing with the Rafiki was probably a mistake, but it's fine, because if I throw it into the Enchantress anyways, it's going to get it's going to take 3 damage, which we're going to do by using the Pinocchio to exert the Enchantress, prevent that 2 lore quest, and then use the Rafiki in order to take out the Enchantress. And then Mr. Smee can take out the Flint Rider, which will, make sure that it has 2 damage by the end of this turn, but that's fine. The opponent does have 6 cards in hand. We have 3, but we have 2 cards on board, but the Pinocchio is essentially useless. Basically, the 2 things on board are just double questers at this point, or, Mr. Smee quest for 2, but, 2 questing cards. They ink a Benja and play a Bucky, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have to deal with this card at some point, but if I go ahead and establish Rabbit, I should be in a good position to just continue to draw when I need to, hopefully, by bouncing, and they won't be able to really keep me on a completely empty hand. What I will say, though, is the Queen's Castle does play very nicely around discard now. It's what Amethyst definitely needed in order to have a better matchup against discard. And the reason I say that is because discard, like I mentioned, has a hard time outing big bodies, and the Queen's Castle is a 7 toughness body that is passive lore generation, and if your opponent doesn't deal with that, it's going to run away with the game, and you can again draw cards on your turn that you can choose to continue to dump when you need it. Anyways, the opponent establishes double Prince John and plays the Sudden Chill, which is going to allow them to draw 2. But the board state doesn't look that bad, and we did finally draw a Grab Your Swords, and this card just it's an instant win against discard, because it clears off the Johns and the Bucky, and I think the opponent may have inked the Bucky earlier as well, and as a result of that, the discard engine is just completely offline here. The Hypnotize doesn't really matter. We've got 2 rabbits, so we're going to discard 1, and that's the opponent's whole turn, right? The thing with Hypnotize is that it uses your turn to cast. So now we can go ahead and continue to establish the Merlin Rabbit to draw and bounce back at some point to continue to draw. And we drew into the Simba, and as much as I wanted to use the Simba in this kind of matchup, it just has limited application. And this is what does unfortunately suck about Simba, is that because you have to choose the character, it cannot play around Ward like Tinkerbell can. But the opponent revealing a 1-drop here is very interesting because it tells me that their cards in their hand aren't really applicable for the situation, or they're just too high costing or uninkables, etc. Cards that they can't afford to play. So we're just going to go ahead and continue to build up a board here, get lore, and just put the pressure on the opponent to say, I'm going to be able to quest for game within the next turn or 2 if you can't actually start dealing with the stuff I have on the board. So they're going to go ahead and challenge with the Prince Eric, and then Bippity Boppity Boo it to protect it. So you can see, like, this is a problem with this card. I think their hand is probably like 2 Bippity Boppity Boos or something, and yeah, I don't know, something else that is like not relevant right now. We top deck a Friends, and at this point I'm just like, well, this is how the deck and the matchup should go, where we're able to draw and see at least 1 copy of our Grab Your Swords. We're able to, at least do something to stabilize the board state, not just, completely lose to the fact that our whole hand is discarded. We go a little bit wide here again to play around the Grab Your Swords if the opponent has it. But even a Grab Your Swords wouldn't even wipe out my board, so yeah, it doesn't really do too much. But in game 3, you can just see how much pressure this deck can put on the opponent, and how it can easily close out a game, and compete with the meta in colors and the meta relevant decks to a certain extent. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this best of 3. Let's move on to the final video. Alright, for this final clip, we have something a little bit more fun and casual, but I just wanted to show you what a great starting hand can really do, even when you go second. This Sapphire Amber deck is going to end up being a Dalmatian deck, which is kind of cool, but again, even Steel Amethyst being a budget option, like, you're still going to run over everything else in the casual space, most likely. I'm going to have to wrap up this video soon, though, guys, because I am really losing my voice. The opponent opts to ink and pass, not having a 1-drop. We're going to ink a hook and play a hook, because, again, having this Pinocchio on turn 2, or the Mim Snake here to bounce the hook back, is a very good versatile combo for us to deal with the early game. The opponent is going to reveal, I think, one of their Dalmatians here and pass. And Pongo, which is what you saw the opponent inked on turn 2, is a critical part of any Dalmatian deck, I think. So seeing that you would ink that, it indicates to me that, again, you have another copy in your hand. I'm thinking about Pinocchioing here, but then in hindsight, it's good that I didn't, because this Dalmatian probably doesn't do anything. It's quest for 1. It is a low impact card that you don't need to waste the Pinocchio on. So I'm just going to quest and then bounce back with the snake and see what the opponent wants to do. They're going to establish a Pongo on turn 3, which is good, and then they're going to now feel comfortable enough to quest with the Dalmatian. Being a 2/3 body, Snake and Fox and those things easily deal with this and makes them go 2 for 1. However, I have more important things to take out with the Mim Snake in that Pongo to make sure the opponent doesn't get that card draw resource going, and then we still have enough to follow up with a Captain Hook. So if the opponent does continue to quest, we do threaten taking out the Dalmatian. Not that you necessarily want to even with the Captain Hook, because it's again a low value target, but it is an option. The opponent establishes that item that is basically double lantern, and I guess I can understand why you want to play it if you just don't want to play extra lanterns for no reason. Like, this technically is a 2 for 1 in terms of card slots in your deck, but I do play Benja, and Benjaing this thing would be absolutely devastating to the opponent. So for that reason, like, I don't like putting all that stock into one card. It's just too risky, right? But again, you can see here the opponent uses the effect but doesn't summon anything, and then plays a lantern. But you can see here that we're on a couple of Maleficents, and the friends on the other side. And again, the opponent not being on Emerald means that our cards are probably pretty safe, but Amber does play the Bare Necessities, which would rip that Friends out of our hand. So again, you should sing Friends before inking, but it's fine in this instance. I draw into another Pinocchio here, and I'm thinking, like, do I use this now to take out one of the opponent's characters? Probably the Rapunzel here. And I'm thinking yes, because with the opponent only on 2 cards, there isn't too much that they can threaten our exerted characters with, I don't think. So after foxing back, I think that was the exerted Pinocchio, we're able to drop another Pinocchio and take out one of the opponent's threats there with our fox still surviving. So again, very, very strong. And you can see how the card advantage just continues to build here between the bounce and just what's in hand. I think the opponent is on overall less resources, I think, right? Yeah, they're on 6 and we have 8, and they're now on the play right here. They're going to establish a Joshua bodyguard, and I think they're also going to establish there's the bodyguard. There's the Pongo. Oh, I guess they don't establish the second thing until next turn. We draw into yet another Fox, which is like actually really good because the Josh is only a 1/6, so I can opt to take this thing out with almost anything. And being now on 2 damage, I can opt to cycle out my Mim Fox and just keep it healthy. But instead, we're gonna go Pinocchio, take out the Pongo here, which makes sense. That's definitely what you want to do to keep the opponent off of the Dalmatian draw engine. And then we're going to still have enough to play the second Madam Mim, so we don't end up bouncing the first one in order to reset the damage. I just go straight for the Pinocchio. But that's, again, totally fine because we're in a state now of the game where the opponent basically has no real resources and probably has no way to generate enough advantage in order to come back. So after playing this Pinocchio out, which they know we had since we cycled it back, taking out their Rapunzel, which is a 0/6, so it doesn't even do any damage back, the opponent's going to realize it's a GG and wrap it up. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It would be appreciated. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.